rush to get things set up this morning. I think that's good. All right. So, what are we doing today? No idea. I have no plan. We have a list of things to do though, so we could probably look at some of those things. I've been putting off looking at trying out the AWS Cloud Development Kit for a while now. But as there are more and more things where we're going to want to add to our API layer, it's and other backend things, right? It's going to involve provisioning things in AWS. Maybe we should look at potentially switching kind of how we're doing infrastructure as code sooner rather than later. So that's a thought. I realized the other day, I guess that was yesterday, as I've been using the front end more and more, the new front end, right? So we have the ability to go into a stream. Is it this view? No, it's this view. Yeah, so we have the suggest videos button now. The triggers are our step function. And but there's no feedback, right? It's just like it's asynchronous, right? It invokes it in the back end. And we have this whole like task drawer thing that we built, this whole tasking system that this front end doesn't talk to, right? Because that was part of the old back end that this isn't using. So that the idea was, maybe we can look at building a new set of APIs and figure out what that task API means in the context of us having these different background jobs. Not all step functions. It would be a mix of things, right? Because we have like just freestanding batch job things that might be going on. So we'd have to have some kind of representation of a task. I was thinking maybe DynamoDB with like a time to live. Maybe that's a thing, right? DynamoDB has TTL fields. Or am I thinking of Redis? Yeah, there's time to live in DynamoDB. Yeah. Cool. So that's an option. I'm pretty happy though with kind of a list of things kind of in the do next column here. There's kind of a mixture of kind of big and small things. I guess maybe let's check out the Cloud Development Kit today. Let me add AWS tag to the stream tags. It's really interesting. I was trying to use the stream manager earlier. Oh yeah, you can see it there. Trying to add tags with this, and this was sort of working. Hold on, if I click populate. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So this should be fine. Also interesting that the merge tags with populate lets me add more than 10. But anyways, so this should match what we have. No, Twitch doesn't have the VS Code one. Anyway, so I tried to click save, and then it's an error. And then actually looking at the console, Twitch is saying you can't add more than 10. Oh, good, it didn't change the type. The whole request failed. That's fine. That is totally fine. Anyway, so trying out the CDK. Yeah, we can do that. Let me convert this to an issue so we can do this from VS Code. So this will be inside the global Telegram repo. All our issues. Okay, So I think how to start this is okay. That's okay. So why is that telling me about uh, it being on main? That's talking about the other repo. Okay, let's do this side by side. And I think I have a tab somewhere of like, here's my notes in workflowy. Yeah, that's nice. Okay, cool. Try out API Gateway v2 and AWS CDK. So this has nothing to do with Cloud Development Kit, but API Gateway, there's two versions. There's V1 and V2, and they are not like, oh, are you gonna upgrade to V2? That's not how that works. Rather, they are different. There's different functionality available for V1 versus V2. So the RESTful APIs that you can create with API Gateway are part of the API Gateway V1. And then if we look at separate, I'm just going to look at the V2 and the Cloud Development Kit docs. The V2 has WebSocket and HTTP APIs. But there are differences. I think the main thing is that with for my purposes, and the reason my note was like you should try out V2 is because for all of my use cases, I think the V2 API Gateway is fine. Will work. It's a matter of recently. Yeah, here's a little context. Recently, I think I looked at a little bit of this on stream maybe, but I started doing OpenAPI documentation for my APIs, mainly as the main benefit actually is actually creating these schemas. So these are JSON schemas that would have called .json files, but the tool that I'm using, what is it called? OpenType. That is the name of the tool, right? Forget. QuickType. Yeah. Glad I checked. It's called QuickType. It seems to have some difficulty if I give it a directory and say, hey, take all the JSON schemas and convert them. But anyway, the tool generates like TypeScript types and Rust types, which is kind of handy, right? So we have like this file, and here is Rust structs for all of the different schemas that I've defined. And then I can reference those schemas, and I can have an API spec for my API endpoints. So I bring this up just to say that if I were to look at the API Gateway v1 and how it works, one of the things it lets you do is you can give it a OpenAPI specification, and it will build out the different resources within it based on what's defined in here. But there's some gotchas. So I think one thing would be it doesn't support these kind of multi-file references that I'm doing here. So like all of the schemas are in a separate file, right? I'm referencing them. I don't think this supports that kind of structure. I don't know if this supports YAML either, so potentially, we'd have to do some kind of processing step. Let's see. And then I think there are some extensions that this supports that would let us tell it. Yeah, here you go. X Amazon API Gateway integration. So you have things outside of what's just in the base API, the OpenAPI specification. To give it like these extension information to tell API Gateway how to integrate with it. Which there is some minor benefit there, right? Of like, okay, well then I can have one file that has all this detail, but it still doesn't accomplish necessarily everything that you would need to do, right? How do you tie this API endpoint to a Lambda function? Maybe you could put some. Maybe there's more you can put here, but even then, you're not going to have the actual ARN of the Lambda or anything here, right? Where would you get that? How would that work? Or you're going to have to, externally get tie that in somehow. Not shown in the example. So I think we're going to have to write some code anyway to create these things. So I think I will go with V2. The V2 HTTP API is cheaper than the REST API in terms of like cost per request or whatever. Not that it's going to matter for me right now. So we're going to figure out how to do all the things. I think I have a tab here of like, okay, that's important notes for API Gateway. I was looking at this earlier, like any gotchas out there. Potentially using the WebSocket API is the thing we could be doing. Okay, we don't need that page. Here we go. So getting started with the AWS Cloud Development Kit. We don't need those things open. So it has a big notice at the top. For a good long while, the Cloud Development Kit was on just the V1. And that's when I started using it. V2 came out a while ago at this point. And now that is the main version. So there's just a warning here. That's all well and dandy. Let's install. Let's do this. Globally install the AWS CDK. Okay, and then we should be able to verify that we have 2 point something, or we can see that there are warnings. Maybe I need to upgrade node. Interesting. Yep, 4162. We should apparently be on 20 or 22. I don't suppose. Sometimes the keyboard cam is kind of annoying. One moment. All right, you can come back now. do things. Okay, so the version that shipped with this version of Ubuntu was 12. So clearly I did something. Yeah. Hold on. Or etc apt something. Sources. Or maybe it was in that directory. Nope. How did I get the version? Hold on. Which node? I have NVM? Do I? Okay, cool. I don't remember setting up NVM. Which probably means that's something I did on stream. All right. So if we go back here. All right. And now everything is gone. Let's see. npm install -g AWS CDK. Now, are you happy? Yeah, you're happy. All right. And then there's a bunch of words. I do already have credentials. Figured the profile. Do other things, but I don't care to. Actually, I think I recently uninstalled the AWS toolkit. It was getting kind of annoying. All right, create your first AWS CDK app. So I guess for now, what I will do is I will create. So we have a we have this infrastructure directory. Maybe I'll create. I guess I'll just. I really want to create a CDK directory. Yeah, see, the CLI uses the directory name to name things within your code. Yeah, well, I don't intend to literally follow along in the tutorial. I think. Also, by the way, Cloud Development Kit has a bunch of different languages that you can code in for defining your infrastructure. I know I've been using Python for Pulumi. I'm really tempted to stick with TypeScript. So I think I will do that. So what did I have inside of infrastructure? I have a bunch of Python code and Pulumi stuff. I guess what I'll do, I'll create a folder called GT CDK. That's not a folder at all. Okay. and we'll go from there. GT. What did I do? Oh, right. I think I know what I did. Nope. I don't, okay, fine. I think dash or underscore. Doesn't matter. What did they use in their example? They use the dash, so that's probably fine. Okay. So TypeScript, so CDK init app language TypeScript. So what is this going to do? It's going to make like a well, CDK.json file, a package.json file. It sounded like a lib directory and a bin directory. So what does that look like? GT CDK. Yep. So we have kind of like our own little repo here. Let's explore this a little bit. So we have a TS config that it's given for us. Sure. Package JSON, GT CDK. Got some scripts. Have some dependencies. Interesting. And we have a just config. Again, it's been a while. We have a CDK.json. So what is this? This has command to run our script inside of bin. Some paths to include and exclude from watching. A bunch of context. So these are like feature flags, settings for the Cloud Development Kit and for its various modules for different kinds of resources. We have npm ignore, git ignore. We have some sample test. Well, we have a place where a test could go using jest to do kind of a, hey, if you set up a stack, you ask what the template looks like. You can ask about, hey, does this template have a resource property? So you can ask about a queue, and does it have a visibility timeout of 300? And then we have the lib. Great. So now we have probably need to tell Biome just to ignore GT-CDK, maybe? Okay, this, something like this, so that error goes away, or warning. Do that. Okay, maybe we can keep Biome as it is. And there's some like, so basically this represents, running this represents deploying the stack, right? So the comment here, if you don't specify env, like here, stack will be environment agnostic. And count, region, dependent features, and context lookups will not work, but a single synthesized template can be deployed anywhere. So the good that, like, if you don't have the environment, pretty much every time I've used the CDK, I've had potentially multiple of these bin files, and then had them with specific environments. And by doing that, gives you a way, like from the command line, just like, oh, I'll run this and it deploys it. You can have like, I want the thing I deployed to look like this when it goes to here, and look like that when it goes to there. And then I guess kind of is distilled down into the dichotomy here, is that if you don't specify the env, then you can ultimately, with the cloud, for context, right? For those that don't know, the Cloud Development Kit, how it works is it produces a set of CloudFormation templates. CloudFormation is a resource in a service in AWS that can provision everything into AWS, basically, nearly everything. And allows you to also create custom resources. So you can create like a Lambda function that's invoked by CloudFormation that does anything you want it to do. You want to do database migrations and have this one thing manage that, you can do that. You want it to provision something in GCP or in Azure or whatever, you can do that through CloudFormation if you really wanted to. But the templates, if you don't specify the environment here, those templates can be generated that are actually deployable anywhere. Like you can go to whatever accounts and you can deploy the template through CloudFormation, and it would theoretically work, assuming maybe the template's relying on some of the things existing or whatever. But if you choose to include the environment here, that gives you the ability in your infrastructure code, in this case our TypeScript code, to ask the CDK about the environment and the accounts and the region and all those things, and then have conditional logic based on that. And then what you're going to generate is no longer independent from the environments, the accounts, and the region that you want to deploy to. So I would be interested in trying this without setting the environments and seeing how that works. So what does this initially do? It doesn't do anything, right? We're not provisioning any resources. So this is just an empty stack. Let's go back to the docs and see what it says about trying to deploy this. So this says it's recommended for production environments to hard code the environments. And I think that makes sense, right? If you have a production environment for a thing, you're going to deploy to that. Interesting. Let's go look at that. Because I do want to try, because every time I've done this, I've had an environment set. I want to try using the CDK without that and see how that works. So let us bootstrap our environment. So this sets up some things in the AWS account. I'm sure the docs explain somewhere in here. Nope, it just talks about that you can look up what it does in the in other places in the documentation. Yeah, I'm probably logged out, aren't I? Okay, 1 second. Let's go over here. Sign in again. That's how that goes. Just doing this off screen specifically because why? Well, I have a lot of accounts in AWS, and there's one place where autocomplete will show all the different account, like sign in, like email addresses, and you don't need to see that. All right. account ID that goes there. I think I'm missing. So like AWS, something like this. So let's go back to the docs. Let's move all the docs over to the end so I can find them more quickly. Yeah, AWS. Okay. And then accounts. And then we're doing US West 2. And that's not going to work. There we go. Let's do this because this is going to be easier to not forget to do if I just set the environment variable. This is glowing Telegram admin as the profile that I have configured as credentials for this account. So we'll do that. So, like the CDK itself, this uses a CloudFormation template to provision some resources in this account for the use of the CDK. So I think like it makes an S3 bucket and some other stuff. There we go. Some IAM roles. What does it actually do? So it's creating an IAM role, system manager parameter, more roles, a ECR repository, the container assets repository, a bucket, more roles, parameters, containers, the same thing. Yeah. It gives you updates as each resource. This is very similar to like in the actual AWS console. Looking at CloudFormation, you'll see a chain of events like this. Okay, so that's bootstrapped. So, if we go back to the tutorial, which I am loosely following, we can do npm run build. It's just going to do, it's going to run the TypeScript compiler. That is an interesting thing that it does. So it just creates the JavaScript and the definition file in place. Sure. It's not how I would have configured it, but we'll just move right along. So if I do this, it should say nothing, yeah? Nothing is deployed yet? Or is this going to show the stack? Yeah, the stack. Okay. And you can see, in its process, it's kind of interesting, right? Because we have kind of this blurring of imperative and declarative, right? So the end result of what the CDK is going to do with the code that we're going to write in TypeScript is to create this declarative configuration for CloudFormation. And CloudFormation is going to take that template, check to see, is this a thing that's already deployed? How is it changing? Do updates or delete things or recreate things? But that's applying the template, right? But the TypeScript code is this kind of imperative code that's going to create, like, instantiate classes, passing in parameters to the constructors, and that just kind of accumulates this structure of resources in kind of an imperative way, which means you can do things like you can loop over an array and create a bunch of resources and do a bunch of things, or have conditional logic, and we can see that here, right? Because we have this console log. So it's just arbitrary TypeScript code we can write here to do whatever. Like you could shell out and like run some build process if you wanted to, although some downsides to that. in terms of slowing things down and um, considerations. But yeah, anyway, so, and then you can see here, it's listing the stack that it knows about. Uh, it's not deployed yet though. So, and then it talks about, hey, you can do stuff. What if we, so let's just skip steps. So CDK synth, that synthesizes the CloudFormation template. Let's see, how does this work these days? There we go. Okay, so it just outputs it to the standard out. And okay, that's not too bad, right? So it's just like, yeah, okay, so what are the resources in the stack? Well, there's the CDK metadata that is a special resource that has some things, and then has some conditions that said, is this available? And there's nothing else, right? Because we've not added anything else. And you can see here it has a parameter. So one of the things you can do with CloudFormation is you can pass it parameters to the application of the template. So this is how this ties into the bootstrap that we did in the previous step. And why that bootstrap was creating a SSM parameter for this to exist. And then we could do deploy. In fact, this could be good. So let's go back to here. Let's go to CloudFormation. What's in here? I don't even know anymore. Things from old projects. Hopefully nothing secret. Nah. It's hide nested. We don't need to see nested stacks. So there's the CDK toolkit stack that we just did with the bootstrap and old stuff from years and years and years ago at this point. So if we do a deploy, this should work, but it's going to create a stack that has basically nothing in it. But that's fine. Just kind of proving that it works. So it's going to do a deploy, and so we should start seeing, there we go, GT CDK stack, create in progress. You can see the events there where it's like doing things, and it's done, right? Because there's basically nothing in it, just this metadata thing. And it's done. It took 17 seconds to deploy, to build and deploy, right? Actual deployment time in CloudFormation was 12 seconds. So this is probably where we step away from the tutorial and just start doing things. And I want this guy, API Gateway v2. So my note from before was essentially that one of the difficulties with Pulumi was it was very unclear how to get API Gateway set up and have it handle, like there were things that I was doing with cores that I was doing through the console because it wasn't clear how to do it in Pulumi. And I noticed that, there's actually like a dedicated section about setting up cores for things in this, and then also trying to figure out how to manage stages and deployments. Like when we apply changes to the API, there's a extra step in API Gateway to actually deploy that change. So you can prep and experiment and test internally without actually applying those changes to the actual API. So one of the stages of the API, which is like an environment, maybe, potentially, if you want to use it that way. And I did see stuff about that in the docs for here, so I thought this might be a good opportunity to let's try to translate some of our API stuff into CDK code. So what we can do is maybe just look at API.py. All right, so here's our Python Pulumi code, and translate some of this. Actually, I wonder. Let's try something really quick. I'm curious if we were to try to use the edit feature of Copilot. So we'll do that, and we'll add this file. Convert the Pulumi Python code into the equivalent spelling. That's not how you spell that, but okay. It's equivalent TypeScript CDK code. Let's be a little bit more explicit here. From API.py. Yep. Py in GTCDK stack.ts. Now, I don't know that I've tried to do an edit where we take like, hey, take something from this file and process it and translate it and put it into a different file. I've definitely done edits where it's like concurrently need to modify multiple things in multiple places to get them to line up. So let's see if it can handle this or how far off the rails it goes. This feels like a big ask. I'm also using the 01 preview, which you can't see because my avatar is in the way. But yeah, I'm using the 01 preview version, the model for this, which works until I get rate limited. In fact, this is probably the best use case for something for this model, because I think the problem I've had in the past is like making several small asks, and then I don't know. I don't know if that's a matter of me making multiple requests and get rate limited that way, or if it was just tokens or whatever. So here we go. It is thinking. So it wants to import and configure API gateway and CDK, create REST API. Well, I guess we'll see if it can do a one-to-one translation, and then we can have it switch to V2. Okay, so what do we got here? So there's a bunch of modules that we'll probably need to import. One of the things this is not necessarily doing is, let's see, is it using props to get things like in, so how this parallels, right? So we have all of these different parameters for our constructor here for the API class. We can potentially also pass parameters into props. Use that to tell it things like how to find the user pool, how to find tables, secrets. So let's see what it does. Interesting. Yeah. So here it just uses a placeholder. Create an ECR repository. Some things it's not happy about. Runtime is missing. Interesting. So potentially this is good. I think that there are some issues though. One issue being that this is not what I wanted because I wanted to use the v2. I just didn't tell it that when I prompted it. I think also what we probably need to do is we need to, like, from the get-go, think about constructs for this. Is it going to make sense? Like, I think this grouping of things makes sense, like lumping all, because we have more than just this API gateway and its resources and kind of the lambdas and stuff that we're doing here. Okay, so let's do this. Let's make a API.ts, and we're going to make a construct. So we're gonna borrow that, we're gonna say, not that, export default class API construct. Excuse me. Yeah, there we go. Extend CDK construct, and then something like that. Except that's a lie. It's just that now. What do you mean? Can that be used as a value? Yeah, there we go. And we're gonna want some. We're gonna want to define an interface for the props for this construct. And so then typically third argument is that. We're not going to have defaults because that's not going to make sense for us. What information do we need here, and how are we going to pass it? So we want a user pool, or do we want an ID? So how do we use the user pool? We need the ARN. Just the ARN. Potentially. I think the easiest thing to do is let's see. So in package.json, do we need to, we probably need to explicitly pull in the packages that we need, right? How does this work anymore? Or is it just in AWS CDK? Just like that, huh? Okay. I guess I'm thinking of the old way, where you have to explicitly list each submodule. Maybe that's true. Yeah, like that. Okay, let's go back here. Find AWS Cognito. AWS CDK lib, like that, maybe? Is there what's in here? User pool. I think if we can get away with it, we use user pool. What is the difference? That's a good question. What is the difference? I love it when I think I know things, but I don't know why I know them. Interfaces, iUserPool. Right, so then we can get things from it, like the user pool ID and ARN. So you can, right, this is what it is. So if you were deploying something that was creating a user pool, you would get the actual user pool type back from that creation of that user pool. If you wanted to look up a user pool, like it's being created by some other stack, or you have some kind of like reference, like an ARN or an ID, you could use these static methods to look it up. And when you do that, you get an iUser pool. But an iUser pool is a thing that's implemented by user pool. So kind of iUser pool is kind of the catch-all that covers both of those cases. Which means that when we start using this, what I can do is in the stack where I'm going to be using this construct, I'm going to be instantiating this class, I can look up the user pool ID of the user pool that already exists from my existing Pulumi stuff without having to create a new one. I can just like point to that one. So that we can have kind of a migration to this new way of doing things. So what else do we need? So we have a user pool. We have a stream ingestion function. Okay. Type iStep function or iState machine. That's the one. And then we have video metadata table. Then it's probably an iTable, like so. And it's unhappy because the auto-generated code there doesn't include the type. Streams table, yeah. Stream series table, episodes table, profiles table, OpenAI secrets is in probably an iSecret. Sometimes, well, a lot of times actually, consistency is nice. Okay, so that covers all the things that we need passed into this to be able to do the things we already do. So let's actually maybe start making that API. How about that? Okay, so we want to make an HTTP API. We can do that like this. I guess that's fine. So what is this all doing here in their example, right? So you create HTTP API and then you add routes and you provide the path, methods that are supported, and the integration. So you have this add routes books, supports any method, and the integration is bookstore defaults integration. Bookstore defaults integration is this HTTP Lambda integration that wraps bookstore default function that they're not actually creating here. Okay. So what's the first thing we want to do? I think we want to do, can we do the authorizer? interesting. Probably don't want to do it that way. Can we look at the table? I think there's a separate section for authorizers. Yeah, there we go. So in this case, we want to use a JWT authorizer to use with our user pool. So we can probably borrow that. Maybe I'll borrow both of these imports. We'll replace this. There we go. Do that. Cool if true, but not true. User pool authorizer is something like this, except it's the I mean, I'll just call it the authorizer. We're not really creating multiple kinds of things there. We can just do props. Okay, well, I guess we're taking a break here, so I'm gonna pause for a couple minutes, stretch my legs, and I'll be back.